This is the United States Energy Association Power Sector Podcast. I'm Herman K. Trabish. I've covered the power sector since 2006, and I currently report for Utility Dive. In this episode of the USEA podcast series on changing energy policy priorities, we're going to talk about what to expect in the power sector under the new presidential administration and Congress as changing resources, spiking electricity demand, and extreme weather events add unprecedented stress to the U.S. power system. Independent Energy Producers Association CEO Jan Smutny-Jones is going to discuss what could happen with energy tax credits, including the new technology neutral tax credit, and the possibility of new action on permitting and regulation. Jan began his career in energy policy in 1981 as a Western Sun local government program manager and was California Independent System Operator Board Chair at its startup from 1997 to 2001. He joined the Independent Energy Producers Association, which represents utility scale renewables, natural gas, and energy storage project developers, as general counsel in 1987. And aside from his CEO duties, he's currently working on the Pathways Initiative to integrate Western energy markets. So, Jan, with that enormous history of experience behind you, what do you think now with the IRA tax credits for utility scale distributed clean energy and utility scale and distributed clean energy resources? Are they going to be subject to significant change from the last 4 years, like maybe a reduction in compensation, an acceleration of the phase out, a change in the requirements for domestic content? Or do you think the new leaders will recognize the importance of the IRA benefits all states and all energy consumers?
Well, good. And thanks, Herman, for having me on today. I think that just to start out with, we were promised that things would be shock and awe. No one should be shocked because they basically said big things are coming, and no one should be awed because it's not really clear how all these various executive orders will work together or work at all. So just starting with that as a foundation, obviously there are the IRA tax credits are out there, and they've been very effective in a significant amount of additional renewables and other clean energy technologies coming into play. Along with, I think it's important the infrastructure bill that came through earlier. So there's been quite a bit of activity in this area. What they do going forward, I think, remains to be seen in some respects. The short answer is they have a long list of things they want to do with expanding tax credits, tax cuts to a tune of about $10 trillion. So how that's all going to fit with these requirements with the existing system, I don't know. I don't do a lot of work in the Treasury or whatever in Washington, but I do talk with people who are active there. Pretty much the targets of the incoming President Trump have basically been focused on offshore wind, which I think is a grievance he has because of his property in Scotland. I can't think of the other reason why, but there's that, and the EV perhaps rebates that were there. Those were the two things that probably were kind of top of the list. The rest of it remains to be seen. We've gone through these cycles of these tax credits there. The tax credits diminish. The tax credits come back over time. 2 points. There is that whipsaw back and forth. But secondly, these are very important for a lot of development in red states. People forget that actually Texas and Iowa and some other places have significantly more, for example, than California does. So the implications of that and the people who are be negotiating that, I think it remains to be seen. So I'm not, my hair's not on fire and running out of the room. On the other hand, I think we just need to be prepared for, what may be coming.
Right, absolutely. A quick question, Jan, about California offshore wind. I want to keep a broader kind of national perspective as much as possible, but do you think that the hostility or the impediments toward offshore wind will affect the major plans that California has for offshore wind?
I think the major plan for California is really one that's also dependent upon infrastructure being developed that isn't underway yet. So, for example,
Mm,
we need to build ports. That will take
yeah,
several years to go forward. So, I'm not an expert on what the federal government can or cannot do with leases off the coast that have already been paid for. They're there. I suspect that will be hard to unwind, not impossible.
right,
So I'm not panicked about that. I don't do a lot of offshore work, but what I do know is that the other infrastructure that'll be needed to build that out is still in play. So
right,
this may be an issue of a multi-year impact there.
right. And that's fitting. I mean, we're in an energy transition, not an
Yes.
energy left turn. Over time, these things will evolve. But I want to get back to the national picture. There was a flurry of development activity across the country in November, December of 2024. And will that protect deployment of the projects over the next 4 years because they're allowed 4 years to once they demonstrate that they construction has started? Or, that's a kind of a specific question, but in general, will load growth and low prices of some of these resources protect investment, even if the incentives change and other rules change? Is that what will be the major factor?
Yeah, I think it's probably yes to both. I think the
Uh,
flurry of activity is the market. It was basically saying, well, we need to get in there early before the election because we don't know what's going to happen. Uh, Historically, remember, every time Congress has changed the rules, they've always grandfathered projects that are under development,
mm,
which is obviously good public policy because you want to be sure you have excuse me a second here, continuity as you move forward. So I expect that flurry of activity was a result of that. I expect it to build out, and I would expect that if Congress did change that in any way, and I'm not saying they will, but if they do, those those projects will be necessary. Second point of the question, and I think this is really important, is that um, we need to build stuff anyway. I mean, the simple
mhm.
fact of the matter is, I made a statement last year. California, and I know this has happened around the country. We've spent tens of millions of dollars on planning, okay, about what California's market looks like in the year 2045, 2050, whatever. It wasn't until last April that the word data center showed up. Okay. And then all
Right,
of a sudden, that's all we talk about. All these data centers are going to be built that are not off in the distant future in 2045. These are people showing up saying, hey, I need 200 megawatts and I need it in 18 months because I'm building a factory here. So that's kind of changed the discussion, I think, completely. So there is a need for load growth, not only in California and to meet policy goals that have been on the books for a while, but throughout the country from the standpoint of like, okay, we're going to need more electricity. Where is that going to come from? So I think that's going to be part of the debate all along. And then one final point here, and I think it's really important because this gets lost. As you indicated, I've been doing energy stuff for a very long time, multiple,
mhm,
administrations between and it swings back and forth. You know, the idea of various tax incentives and whatever for renewables or clean energy is not any different. The oil and gas industry, the nuclear industry, the coal industry, all have various kinds of incentives that keep those operations moving forward, able to invest in the future, whatever. So it is not like the government has singled out, well, let's get clean energy going to the detriment of everyone else with respect to these tax credits. They're in our economy everywhere. So I think it's important just to put that out there because that gets lost in the debate always very early on. Why are you giving these people this? And normally that's, those are tax benefits or whatever that who's ever
Everybody, yeah.
already have.
Let me move on. First of all, you were quoted on the podcast, an earlier podcast, by Keith Martin, a very veteran
Yes.
authority on energy and tax credits, that we're facing a Pearl Harbor of load growth. So I'd like to, what do you think? Will the technology neutral tax credit come into play here? Can the new Congress either leave it alone or use it, change it to drive more natural gas or hydrogen with carbon capture, more advanced nuclear, more geothermal? Or will this and I correct me if I'm wrong, but this idea of a Pearl Harbor of load growth, is that what's going to drive the growth of everything?
Well, that's what I was referring to earlier. Yeah, this was a sort of like, where did this come from? Like, okay, well, it turns out that a lot of this load growth is associated with artificial intelligence, which has a huge electricity demand associated with it. You have projects that have been under development in one form or the other for an extended period of time that are probably ready to go. We already talked about the group that came out of last year. And I know very well that I have members that have been, they've got all kinds of projects that are lined up. So obviously it would be important from a national perspective to get those projects up and moving. With respect to all of the above kind of technology, I mean, I represent a portfolio of resources, as you indicated earlier. I do have member companies that are looking at carbon capture and sequestration. I have member companies that are looking at using hydrogen as a fuel. And I'll point out that the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power has a plant that's going in Utah, which I got a chance to visit. It's very impressive, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But if we don't try these things, we won't know. And we have a pretty big appetite for electricity, and that's only going to increase as we continue to electrify housing and whatever else. And as I said earlier, our economy driven by AI. And we do have the Billionaires Boys Band that showed up at the inauguration, and all those folks are pushing for, AI and trying to reposition themselves in terms of, making sure that the growth in that sector is moving. So I think anything we can do to basically help, as I've said, there is a moral and existential imperative to be good. It's folly to be perfect. So if there's other technologies out there that we ought to be looking at that help reduce carbon globally, that's a good thing. And particularly if we can incorporate them into our economy in a way that is helpful for all of our ratepayers across the country.
Okay, I want to get to one more topic before we close this out, Jan, and it's something just a little bit about. I've seen studies that suggest that it's local and not federal permitting and regulatory impediments that are slowing deployment of transmission, especially. Now, Manchin-Barrasso didn't pass last year, but do you think there's going to be action on permitting and regulatory reform from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or maybe from Congress that will enable more of these resources and better reliability of the electric system? Do you think we're going to see that during this next few years?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, it's a 2-point question. So point number one is, and we've been very active with some of the other renewable organizations here in California to try to get transmission built quicker. Okay, if we can't get the lower cost utility scale renewables to market, there's no point of talking about our goals because we won't get there. So there is a lot that needs to happen on a state level. We are making progress. It's a little slower than we would like and perhaps not as expansive, but that's important. I do know on a national level, transmission has been a major discussion point for a long time. And this gets complicated because you end up on a federal level. And I will point out that, the new chair of the FERC is a states' rights guy, Commissioner Christie, and that there's nothing new there. So when you get into the issue of transmission and the need for it on a national scale, like think about it as the interstate highway system, we need some leadership on that level. On the other hand, you've got the states which have land use planning and construction requirements within their states. So it's a delicate balance there. But I really think it's important to think of this as the interstate, as a highway system. And reminding people of history, the interstate highway system was a function of a defense bill that Eisenhower put through, because apparently transportation was something that was a hot topic back in the mid-50s. He was impressed with the Autobahn when he fought there in World War II, and basically sold it as a defense strategy that we needed the I-10 and the I-15 and all the other highway systems around the country. So I view the transmission system much the same way. We all benefit, every state benefits from this. And if we don't think of it that way, then kind of shame on us. We're going to have an inefficient and very expensive systems.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people don't remember also that the interstate highway system was begun and driven by the Eisenhower administration, but it was finalized by the Kennedy administration. It was a bipartisan effort that completed it. So we don't have much of that going on right now, but it's entirely possible, as you say, that people will come around to understand how important it is to everybody. But again, we don't have any more time. I really want to thank you. My guest has been Independent Energy Producers Association CEO Jan Smutny-Jones. He's given us insights into what could happen under the new president and Congress as changing resources, spiking electricity demand, and extreme weather events add unprecedented stress to the U.S. power sector. As always, I also want to thank our listeners for taking the time to check out the USEA Power Sector Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with everybody you know our quest for energy transition solutions.